All right. So welcome to the August coffee hour. We are going to get the PowerPoint pulled up here real quick. So starting off, it's August. We're progressing in our seed season, and we're going to talk about a few more weeds and transitioning into brush. We've got here a lovely photo from Donald, courtesy of Liz, who's here with us today. And on the right, that is the rare rusty patch bumblebee. And that is a photo that Shane took. Where did he take that? Steward. At Steward. Right. All right. So we've got cool critters out the wazoo here in Dane County. We're very lucky. So training opportunities, I think these are everything that we talked about last time, so nothing new. If you're interested in saw trainings, they are filling up / full. They're very popular, but there are wait lists. And if you wanted to get on one of those and you didn't get a chance, there will be more sometime next year, but we don't have any dates yet. Next coffee hour is September 19th. We haven't had a scheduled one for October yet, but keep an eye out for that. And don't forget, the volunteer picnic is rapidly approaching. We would love to see you there. Upcoming Land Steward Workdays. These are some of the regularly occurring ones. So we've got the Saturday, September 7th workday over at Stewart with the Goat Squad. And then on Friday, September 13th, the Natural Areas Workday at Schumacher. Those are every second Friday. And just a reminder, if you guys want any more on the calendar that we're not getting, just let us know. And we have a lot of upcoming work days with our Dane County staff. This is our seed season ramping up. We are going to have like, I think 4 to 6 work days a week, sometimes multiple work days in a day collecting seeds. So if you're signing up online, just make sure you know which location you're going to, because there sometimes will be multiple at the same time, sometimes parks right next to each other. So a lot going on there. The first one that I will tell you about is tomorrow. There's 2. There's one at Anderson Dog Park and there's one at Schumacher. So 2 that you could sign up right away, and then a bunch more coming up next week. And as usual, you can find those on our My Impact page under, oops, I forgot to update this part. It will be under ecological restoration workdays if it's for the land stewards or at Walking Iron. And you would want it under ecological restoration native seed program for seed collection. So that is a typo, not invasive weed control anymore. That's old. Yeah, there we go. So we've already started out collecting a bunch of seeds. We've gotten some shooting star and goat through from partners where we've gotten the chance to collect on some private land. And then we picked a ton of Golden Alexander over on Moreland Hill. That was multiple days with our crew, with OFS, with the workday with volunteers. So we've already got tons of that. And then we've got June grass at Walking Iron, I believe. And we got false sunflower starting out. We got some of that at Moreland Hill, but that's a great one to get if you can find it. False sunflower, aka early sunflower, aka oxeye sunflower. There's too many names for it. But here's just some recent photos of all of us out there with our bounty of Golden Alexander. Oh. I'm scrolling on this thing really. Is that the first one? Did I skip one? There we go.
There's one.
There we go. So we are getting back into the routine of highlighting some of our parks and the awesome work that's going on there. And today we want to highlight Schumacher Farm Park. Lars, would you like to say anything about that?
Yeah, I just threw up these pictures here because typically Schumacher, most people think of it as a historical living history park with lots of old neat machinery. They've got the old farmhouse, the barns, the buildings, the Center for Rural History, and then their new Center for Antique Machinery. However, Schumacher also has some very nice restorations and a growing number of restorations out there that we want to spotlight, especially today.
How big is the land around? Or
I would say 440s, I think.
Oh,
Around
wow.
20 acres.
Nice.
So I think the next one has a slide, but this one shows just a slope where we've been focusing a lot of efforts recently. Prairie remnant. It's probably only a quarter or a half acre in size, but slowly expanding on one of the many steep north-facing slopes in that part of the county. Empire Prairie was previously all throughout northern Dane County into Columbia County, very treeless landscape. And there's a number of these little steep, rocky, often north-facing remnants throughout that whole area, in and among that big dairy farming part of the county. And so the remnant at Schumacher, full of lead plant, elm root, prairie smoke, ash flowers, sedges, shooting stars. Used to have a pine plantation that covered a good number, part of this remnant that has been cut off, and we're cutting off a number of other undesirable trees in the north. That one photo to the right, you can see. And then go to the next slide. Got a map on the left, so it has 340s. 37 aerial looks somewhat similar to the one now, very open, very farm heavy part of the county. Trees coming in on the north facing slope there, kind of in the center part of the picture, that we're slowly removing. And then in addition to some prairie restorations that are right around the farm buildings on the south side of this picture, with the Friends, we are transitioning many of the farm fields on the far northern side, the north 40 to 50 acres that sticks up there on the map is what we're transitioning over the next, I would say 3 to 4 years. The first 17 acres has been seeded, it's coming in very nicely. And then we're working with the farmer and the Friends to transition the next 2 sections of prairie on sort of the eastern side of that map.
So it's going from leased farmland, sort of like at Donald, over to prairie restoration now?
Absolutely. Cool. Yep. So I want to I guess this points out a little bit of our management work in some of the existing prairies that were established, probably 20 plus years ago in some cases by Wayne Pauley and Marcella, who was the original farmstead that then transitioned to the county. A lot of tree removal, burn piles, getting out the buckthorn, undesirable trees. And then in recent years, and go to the next photo.
It's gone. Okay.
There we go. We've had some pretty good volunteer support, especially here in the last couple of years. In the past, Mike Shuka and a few folks have done a lot to reduce the weeds and the brush, undesirable trees, help maintain the prairies. And the volunteer efforts, I would say, are growing out there. John Kessler is with us today. Hosts some work days along with Nell, who is one of their administrative staff. And I'm going to turn it over to John, maybe talk a little bit about the work out there and what you have going on and how people can get involved.
Schumacher is a wonderful little park. It's urban enough that a lot of classes come out from schools, Shabazz, Wanakee. And the Friends is pretty active in pollinator walks and bird walks. And a big emphasis on the old farmhouse and the history of that, the whole farming area in there. Each spring, we have a planning session with Larry Sonato, and the North Slope is one we've been working on now for the last 2 years. And it was pretty much just buckthorn and honeysuckle and junk trees and a bunch of pines that were planted in there. And apparently some of the Friends group liked the pines. Well, they've been slowly getting removed, and I think this winter they're gonna probably be gone.
Not very helpful.
No. But we've had great help from OFS, and like I said, schools that come out, and the county crew has just been wonderful. I mean, if we end up having an area that is really big and kind of looking insurmountable, talk to Lars, and somebody's out there to deal with it very shortly. So, I mean, the support from the county staff is just phenomenal. But one of the sad things for me anyhow is in transitioning from the slope from just a junk woodlot is hopefully to an oak savanna, but there are a lot of shady plants in there that we're losing. The jack and the pulpits, the bloodroot, the red baneberry, Dutchman breeches. It's just sad to see them grow. We tried to transplant some of the jacks back up into the woods around the house, so hopefully we can save some of it, and hopefully we'll get some seed from them as well this year. So, but that's, just an ongoing, like everybody's aware of any place you work, it's just always something they do there. We were fortunate enough to get some strawberry plants this spring, and as fate would have it, we were prepared to water them all summer long. But we got them in just before all the rain started. And I mean, we planted them in groups of 5 or 6, and some of the patches now have 40 and 50 plants from the runners. I mean, it's just been crazy, and the rain continues. So I haven't had to water it. So that's really good. So yeah, it's a work in progress, and many helping hands, and that are very appreciated. And like I say, great support. And everybody here, I'm sure, knows the support we get from the county staff.
We try.
Yeah, you do good.
We
Yeah,
see all the work that you all do, and we know that we can help your efforts and you help our efforts. That's the formula to our success here. So it's been really heartening to see so much progress with this park as well, John.
If I can ask, you talked about on that fence line on the new prairie, a new water drainage system going on. Have there been anything kind of formalized or planned for that? Because we planted some stuff in there and not much came up this year because the loam was so thick and stuff. And I don't know how much seed we made it to the ground, but there is a fairly large area that's open that you don't want to do anything if it's going to come in and get torn up.
Yeah, there's a big slump in there from previous farming practices that kind of cut through that bottom and eroded it out. There is a plan developing to fill and stabilize that area. So yes, if we wanted to plant in there something in the meantime, it would just be something that we want to stabilize the soil, and nothing too precious that we can't harvest it here soon when that gets kind of torn up. Yeah. So I just want to thank John and Mike Schuka and Nell and all the volunteers out at Schumacher. Appreciate everything you do. Great working with you. And if anyone wants to join you guys, you've got Workdays.
The second Friday of each month.
Second Friday of each month, what is it, 9 a.m. to noon?
9 a.m. to noon, unless I think we had one day when it was 90 degrees, I think we stopped a little bit.
Yeah, so anyone listening or anyone here today wants to team up with John and the gang, that's when to find them. Really wonderful park to visit if you haven't yet already. Like I said, it's known for its rural history, historical value. It's one of our historic sites, historic parks, but it's really got some neat natural areas and growing natural areas as well in the next few years.
Yeah, that hilltop is beautiful looking out over the area being restored. It's exciting to think about the prairie extending beyond that at some point. It's really lovely.
Yeah.
Do you have any more slides on this one?
Can I ask if you've had any experience there with trying to cut through turf? Or did you, like, around the farm or the house and all of that, was there any, like, yard that you had to deal with?
There is, and there still is. But on the edge of the yard, there are a couple little wooded areas that
Okay.
kind of surround the house. And outside of that, it was pretty much just all farmland
Okay.
and tillable. And so the prairies were planted and burned on a pretty regular basis. So there's hasn't been a need to take out anything like that. So I'm pretty fortunate that way that we just have clear the stuff and throw some seed around.
Yeah, sounds good.
Before we move on, I'll note that we're going to try to make the rounds a little bit and highlight different parks. But if you guys have something you want to talk about in your park, you're welcome to jump up and say, I'd like to be highlighted. Just let us know. So don't put you on the spot. But. All right. So if everybody's good with that, we will move on to talking about fall weeds and brush. Lars, you want to talk about these species here?
Yeah, so what's happening as far as our invasive species right now, you probably are aware, we are thankfully transitioning out of weed season for the most part. Hedge parsley looks a lot like that photo on the left. The seeds turn from a green and a succulent seed with green coloration to more of a dried out brown and brownish gray seed. That's about the time those seeds become viable. So if you see any hedge parsley out right now, it's getting into that viable stage, and you want to be sure of not letting any viable seeds hit the ground. You got to bag it up, which is not a lot of fun to do. And that's why we are always very aware of what's happening in the field and try to work according to the phenology of the plants to do work as efficiently as possible. So we've been out like crazy mowing, pulling, spraying hedge parsley so we don't have to bag them. But if you happen to see them out right about now and you want to make sure no viable seeds hit the ground, as soon as they turn brown, grayish brown, they're starting to get viable and you got a bag. Sweet clover, you'll notice on the right picture here, the flowers are being replaced by those seeds that are swelling. A lot of sweet clovers are already well past the flowering stage. Again, back to see. That's pretty much the story with everything else at this point. You run into parsnips, you name it. It's pretty much turning into a viable seed. Hopefully you've already addressed those species, or together we have addressed those species at your park. But we are getting to the end of the weed season, and if there is such thing as a lull where we can take a breath and a little bit of a break, it's probably here in kind of mid-August. Weeds are kind of tapering off, but a lot of our native seeds haven't really begun to form. There are some species, of course, that we'll talk about that are forming seeds for collection. Maybe this year kind of seems faster than a lot of years. Seeds are coming quick, but right now it's a little bit of a lull. So we tend to focus on treating brush this time of year. Might have some of the pictures of that. Next slide. Yeah, okay, so brush can be treated. Brush can be treated, cut a lot of different times of the year, but we often are working on other things during the growing season. And once those other things are taken care of and that sense of urgency is over, we like to transition to foliar spraying brush like buckthorn resprouts, seedlings, honeysuckle, you name it. All sorts of brush this time of year. So here's a picture of buckthorn that's been burned off. You can see the stump there from the spring's fire. But sure enough, you know, just burning through brush resprouts isn't going to kill it. Mostly it won't kill it. So coming in this time of year and hunting around for brush in among your natives and then treating them is a very good thing to do, very efficient to get them when they're still, you know, knee to waist high, not overhead, and not having to cut and treat them again. So our Garland Escort mix is to the left there. We've played around with different recipes for buckthorn. This is the one that we recommend. It is awfully strong. 6 ounces of Garland 4 Ultra per gallon plus Escort plus MSO. That is a wicked cocktail, but we're here to kill the buckthorn, not just making it mad. So we've tried 4 ounces of Garland plus Escort and had very poor spotty success, probably 25% mortality, and that is not good enough. So we have had to up it all the way up to 6 ounces per gallon. Of course, this is not the Garland that you use for stumps. This is the concentrate. The stuff that you take from Libby Road is pre-mixed, ready to use, 20% Garland with bark oil, and that is for stumps, the blue stuff. What you're using here is the concentrate in the little squeeze bottles that you get from Libby Road. 6 ounces plus a 1/4 tea Escort plus MSO, which is your surfactant. It also helps to penetrate or dissolve through that cuticle. If you don't have any buckthorn and you are just spraying honeysuckle, burning bush, box elder, so on and so forth, you can probably drop that down to 4 ounces of Garland. If you got a lot of buckthorn in there, dial it up to 6.
We have a question,
Yeah.
not about brush specifically, but if we could address it real quick. Rita is asking, the county quit spraying the birds picture foil in our southeast area of the park near and now into the apple orchard fence. What can be done this year / next year to stop that invasive, and should we be concerned?
Okay. Yeah, so Rita, you and I should probably talk offline. That is a hard area because it stretches quite a ways along the edge of our property there at Silverwood, along the full entirety of that roadside, seeded with birds with trefoil. So
Not by us.
not by us. So yeah, you and I should talk if we really want to try to keep that from encroaching more in the orchard. We're going to have to get out there and use some herbicide. We use Method or Milestone for treating bird's foot, and it is persistent. The seeds last a long time in the soil. Leah will tell you all about that, and intrusive grasslands. And our sites that we've been treating bird's foot, we've had to treat many years in a row. And in some cases, it's still coming. In some cases, it doesn't appear to be quite as bad as crown vetch, but very persistent. So, Rita, we have been treating the leafy spurge along that edge of that road. We treated it again this year, so I think we're really on top of that species, but the birds is something else we're gonna have to talk about offline.
Yeah, I think there's a few places where we need a little bit different strategy because of the amount that there is. As far as if you were doing anything about like small patches of birds for trefoil this time of year, a lot of it is going to seed. So generally, I'm not gonna bother with it at this point, but if you have like a little bit you want to get rid of it, you can kind of, it sprawls out, gather it together and like clip it and bag those seeds just like you would anything else. And then it's, it's still green, you can still spray it. Obviously, they'll still kill that plant, but if you're not getting the seeds this time of year, it's kind of not worth it just because it's producing so much. You're killing one plant and it's making, 100 more or whatever. Although in some areas where it's being like mowed down, you'll see it flowering, but I've noticed it's not going to seed yet in those areas. It's kind of a setback. So it depends, but probably something more to address for next year.
Lars, what do you put on sumac spread? Same formula?
Yeah, so sumac's tricky because it has such a large underground root system there with a lot of energy reserves. So we will treat it with the same mix. I think people have also used Milestone with success on there on sumac. But the key with that species and a lot of these clonal species like aspen or dogwood is just coming back repeatedly and not letting a whole lot of time pass before you come back so that it can't recover. So yes, we do use this mix. We might also use Milestone alone on it, but coming back and being good about revisiting your sites, very important for those types of species.
I think I have an old land steward's handbook that calls for a 1/2 ounce MSO to 1 ounce MSO.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? So I think I probably just need to take a different picture so that I have it on my phone. But do you know if in ISM track or in the in our volunteer my impact, is it this or is it the old formula?
I'm not. I don't know that we have that information on there.
Yeah, I may have mailed out a fresh, updated herbicide cheat sheet, and if you can't find it, let us know, and we'll send it out again, or we'll post it where we have. Yeah, we'll post it. I believe the updated one is on our website.
Okay.
It will also say 4 ounces per gallon of Garland 4, which we've upped. So
Yeah,
okay.
I think the land steward handbook that is on, or perhaps it's the general volunteer handbook that's on the website, I think is more updated than print ones you guys might have. I know Claire has been wanting to update it and get it like printed out, but unfortunately that's fallen behind amongst many other things. So yeah, so hopefully the most updated version that we have available is on there, but if you think you're missing something, just let us know.
Okay.
the big thing with the MSO is it's a surfactant that helps the herbicide spread across the leaf surface.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's nothing real strict about making sure it's a quarter or a half or 1 ounce. If you start getting the 1 ounce or higher, you could be hurting the grasses a little bit, which is not what we want to do.
Okay.
We want to try to use the smallest amount possible while also allowing that herbicide to spread across that leaf surface and not beating up and running off like it has a tendency to do. Don't have any surfactants in there. So if you're out there and you're targeting something and it looks like, oh boy, man, it's really beating off this type of this species with the cuticle and this time of year, and I don't know, a 1/4 ounce isn't really doing it. Take it up to a 1/2 ounce and see how that changes the way it spreads on that leaf surface.
I did just check my impact, and it is the old formula. Just so there's a files tab, natural areas program files, and herbicide recommendations is what I have,
Gotcha.
was that 5 years ago or something?
Okay.
Okay.
We should update that.
Yeah, we definitely need to.
It's nice when you're, I don't know, it's nice to have it affordable.
Yeah, definitely.
And
No,
then because my impact page is something that we're trying to get used to, it can be like, help to-
Yes.
Yes, no, definitely, that's
Thanks
something,
for
thank you
pointing that
for, pointing that out, we need to update that. Yeah, I mean, I love to have a reference with me, I don't remember all the herbicide mixes, so it's definitely want to have that out in the
Yeah.
field for sure.
I just took a picture and it has helped, but I realized that. it's not that.
Yeah, and hopefully it's not too far off of the
No, it's
benchmark,
just,
but
I put in more MSO than I needed to.
gotcha. Well, I'm sure it's not necessarily a bad thing, but we'll make sure we update that.
Well, something that we do regularly, and we are likely using this method at many of your parks, is seeding in native grasses and sedges. So when we take out your brush, we take out the brush, the weeds, we come in and quickly get something native established. So picture on the right here is Lakeview Hill Park with a really nice catch of Canada wild rye, olive brush grass, silky wild rye. That was all just a thicket of buckthorn, honeysuckle. And now we've got something occupying that space that we've removed that brush. And the other added benefit is that we can begin to burn, use fire in those areas. Grasses carry fire very well. And we can come over the top of those grasses or sedges with our brush mix, Garlon Escort MSO brush mix. Treat your broadleaf weeds like your hedge parsley or your buckthorn seedlings that are integrated among those grasses. As we see on this picture on our left, the grass seedlings coming up nicely. That's usually what it looks like after the first growing season. They don't tend to put up a flower stalk and start seeding until at least the second year. But our Garlon Esper mix will not kill those grasses unless you put in a ton of MSO or really soak them heavy. You can give them a little bit of damage, but it will harm your native forbs. So if you have important or rare species that you want to protect, preserve, you've got to be very selective in your application method. We don't want to come in with our UTV and just kind of carpet bomb the whole area. We don't want to use our boom sprayer. We want to do either spot spraying, maybe mowing, and pulling, something a little bit more selective. If we have desirable native forbs, native shrubs, or like the oak seedlings that we're trying to preserve. But a lot of our areas don't, especially if they've been pretty heavily degraded over the years. So I'm looking around the room and I'm looking at Todd and John and two of you at Donald and Mary and Dane over at Steward, and you will recognize this method. So this is kind of what it looks like this time of year, with that first crop of grasses coming in. And if it didn't make sense to you before, hopefully this slide kind of drives it home why we do that. In a couple of years from now, as we continue to get those native or those invasive weeds and brush species under control, we can come over the top and add our native forbs that we want. A lot of these ryes are short-lived. Even your some of your native grasses won't hang on forever. So getting in forbs is not the hardest thing in the world to do when you have ryes established. They don't typically stay around forever. You see them fade out. So that's our technique that we've been employing, and what we'll be doing this time of year, spraying over the top of them. We have questions on that approach?
A quick question, Lars,
Yeah.
not necessarily on this, but on that north slope, I mean, the jewel weed is so thick that nothing else is gonna get through there.
Mhm.
I suspect as things are thinned out, that'll go away a little bit, but is that something we're dealing with early on and, cutting some of it or?
Yeah, I don't typically pay too much attention to jewel weed, but I know at some other parks, Anderson Park comes to mind, we've had really pretty big years of jewel weed in the woods while we're trying to get good stuff established. And we have simply just mowed it down, and that keeps the light going down to those little seedlings down below. Having some jewel weed in there is fine, it's a nice native plant, and the pollinators and the hummingbirds like the flowers, but yeah, if you're trying to get something better established, just giving it a cut back.
Because we just sowed seed along the whole thing and it's just kind of late now to do it, but
Yes.
next year I'll.
I think they're pretty easily managed with some mowing. I think.
It's definitely something that can get thick, especially if it's just wet enough for it to, but I would think some mowing would pull that back a little bit.
If we're clearing an area, like this last year, we got a bag of primarily rye seed, I think, to put on the top of the north facing hill where some clearing had happened. Is that the only time that we can plant that? Do we have access to any more seed? Like if we clear an area, do you want us to put down some more rye just to sort of not let anything else get established in there, or?
Good question.
Is that
We
only a
are
winter thing?
usually only a winter thing.
Okay.
We're usually collecting right now. We've got a great crop of grasses to collect from this year in a lot of parks. So we'll be getting as much as we can. We may be able to purchase some years.
Okay.
We have grants available. And then we typically dole that seed out come like January.
Mhm.
And then in the wintertime, many of you have done this, you got it down on top of the snow, or even as late as into like April. Those native grasses do pretty well just germinating on the top of the soil too. So that's typically the time frame when we do that. If you want to hold a little bit back, when you get some in the wintertime, just for when you happen to clear later in the year, that's fine too. It probably won't germinate though
Okay.
until.
I didn't know if it was like
cooler
lawn
weather.
grass seed that you can put out, kind of all the way up into September or so. Okay,
Yeah, I would
that's fine.
think if you planted it like now, that it would probably start germinating in the spring.
Okay.
So,
Good enough.
I mean, not saying harm in doing it now if you had it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like there's a window here though where you can pick seeds to kind of interseed, maybe on the next hillside over or whatever. And it almost seems like it seems in some areas that I'm working in right now that, man, I could get it down on fairly bare soil before the leaves fall. And is that
That's a good point.
is that positive? So if you have seed where it looks like you could interseed into some newly opened areas, is it okay to put it down now, or would you prefer that we wait till winter?
I would
snow?
say that if you have it, I think this would be great to put it down, just because like seeds are ready this time of year for a reason, right? That's when they would put it down naturally. So if it's convenient for you, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that.
I know, Mary, you've done that where, there's a lot of outlet. So you can just throw it over here and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
And
Right
there,
now
some
the-
species prefer it that way. There's a few where it's like you almost can't get them to germinate later, but
Yeah, it's, right now, the seed has changed, the awns or whatever changed from green to kind of white or yellow, and it's like the hillside glows.
Mhm.
It's amazing in the sun, the difference, in 2 weeks. So, kind of, not that I'm totally tired of going after buckthorn or anything. I'm kind of ready to
Yeah.
do something
Yeah.
to put inside.
So that's a good point, Mary. For the parks where you all are working at, like tomorrow at Schumacher, we're gonna collect bottle brush wild rice. It's green, but fading, and it's brown, and the seeds are plump, and they come off really easily. So if you all have these species at your parks and you want to do something besides kill stuff with your volunteers, you know, that's a great activity to do with them, and they like it. And for a lot of these grasses, when you do clippers, you just strip them off, and they're a little rough on your hands sometimes, but wearing gloves is fine. That's a great change of pace for volunteers, and it's a very important set of species that we like to see, and either replant them right away for yourself or give them to our program and we'll take them to another park.
So it sounds like our takeaway is that for us, it makes sense to mix in the fall into winter and then spread in winter and stuff like that. Just because we can't be mixing all year round because we don't have like the logistics for it, but
Right.
like ecologically, there's nothing wrong with planting now if you have
Okay.
it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Will that rye kind of self-reseed, assuming it doesn't get mowed or anything? It just, okay,
It'll
enough
as
to
you're
spread?
stripping it, you'll inevitably lose a lot of it. Kind of like when they harvest wild rice, they're also planting the wild rice. And that'll germinate. But as other competition comes in, you get your forbs established, eventually kind of peters out, and it's always going to be there. It's just never quite as abundant.
Okay,
So as when you have bare soil.
sure. All right.
I'm gonna let us move on from
Yeah.
this just because we're
Mhm.
using up a lot of time here, but there's plenty more questions and things to talk about. So if you want to ask more later, please do. We can always come back to
Yes.
brush. There's lots to
Time
say there.
flies.
Cool. So moving into, as Mary was saying, perhaps something we'd like to talk about if we're getting tired of brush and weeds and things is seeds. These are just an example of a bunch of species that are either ready now or will be very soon. So we've got silky wild rye, we've got bottle brush grass we were talking about, Canada anemone. There's our favorite sunflower that has many names. I prefer false sunflower because it's not technically a sunflower. Heliopsis helianthoides. Helianthoides literally meaning like helianthus, but not. Which helianthus is sunflower. Anyway, Shane and I were having an argument about this recently. And we got a bunch of the tincture foils are all coming ready. You might find those are very easy to pick by accident. Right, unless you want to collect them that way. We've got northern bedstraw, anise hyssop, or I think some people call it maybe lavender hyssop, it's the purple one, or at least the purple one now. Blue cohosh, there's some of that in some of our woods. It's got the big blue berries on it that are getting ready. Glade mallow in some of the wetter areas. And New Jersey tea, which is a really cool one. If you got that one, please grab it. Pale purple coneflower. If you have the purple coneflower, the Echinacea purpurea, that I've been noticing is still flowering, but Echinacea pallida, the pale purple coneflower, is ready about now. So prairie cinquefoil, purple meadow rue, yellow pimpernel, which I'm actually don't remember what yellow pimpernel is or what it looks like.
We don't have a lot of it.
Okay. See Lars if you think you might have that.
Yeah.
Wild bergamot, that is becoming ready. I've noticed a few that were still flowering, but for the most part, they're getting to the point where you can collect that. And it is having a great year, as it has been for a few years now, it seems like. Horse mint, saw some of that was ready just this week. So that's the other Monarda species. And then dark green bulrush, I collected some of this last week. That one is ready and going. And that's one you'll find in your wetlands, as well as wool grass, which is actually not a grass, it's a sedge. Even though it sometimes is called, there's like a rush name for it too, but it's a sedge. But that's a cool one. And then brown fox sedge is ready. I was looking for this in a location last week where we used to have it and we couldn't find any. There was only a couple stems. So keep an eye on your sedges. There's a lot of them and a lot of them getting ready. You think you have some, Mary?
And yeah, if you need some, I pulled some off.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead and collect it and spread it if you got somewhere you want to spread it, or we'll take it too. So yeah, this is so cool. I mean, there's lots of great sedges out there. So I think they don't get noticed sometimes, the poor little sedges.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I'm sure there's other things that we're not thinking of too, but that's just examples.
fast, and all that heat this summer or something, it's just speeding things up. It's a little earlier than I tend to think about a lot of these species being ready.
Yeah, like golden Alexander is like almost done.
Is the horseman, can you feel the seed in there, or is it like dusty? Because it's still got quite a bit of color to it, and I always think about it fading out more.
It does definitely fade, and you start having, or at least what I've noticed is like that each little seed head on it starts getting brown, kind of tan brown. But what I think you can do is if you can pick it up and kind of flick at it, it'll like have the little papery seeds come out, and that's like easier to see that they're ready that way. Whereas if it still feels kind of like wet and fleshy and it doesn't flick out seeds, then it's probably not ready. But yeah, it's on the edge. Some places I've seen it's not ready at all. So
Okay.
I think it depends on the site, because at Walking Iron it was ready the other day. But
What's the wood, is it wood mint or something that
Mhm.
we planted that maybe came originally
Yeah.
from Donald?
The hairy mint. Grows in Savannah there alongside.
Is that?
I think I've seen some of that in the UK. Maybe not at Donald, but.
That's another one that, is that a seed?
Yeah.
yeah, if you see stuff that's ready, even if you don't know what it is, send us a picture. Maybe we don't know what it is. Maybe it's,
Oh, I got.
we didn't know it was there yet.
Yeah. We love pictures.
Let's see what we have next. Oh, and this is just a reminder again about those plant ID cards. If you Google the Dane County plant ID cards or copy this link, you can find those. And it's not every species, but it's a lot of them. And maybe we can update those in the future. I don't know, but it's just a nice resource if you're like, now, what would be ready about now? And it gives you kind of the dates for when they're around and what it might look like when it's going to seed. So.
Is that more cards than what were handed out at the training?
I didn't know there were physical ones with the.
Yep,
trainings.
there were some
Talking about-
laminated cards on like just a little ring.
No, that
It
was.
was handed out a couple of years ago.
Those
Yeah.
are probably the invasive species ID.
Yeah.
This is the native one. We've only
Okay.
printed a couple stacks. Of it.
Okay.
It's a print.
All right,
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
got it. Okay.
But yeah, and it's clearer online. This is just a screenshot of an image, but yeah, it's just a nice little reminder for what to look at and things are ready and stuff like that. So
So there is a spot on there, like to the left of the dime, that's what it looks like when it's.
Yes.
yeah, so I don't know that it shows up very good on that screen, but yeah, it shows like they should all have like the whole plant, the plant when it's blooming, the plant when the seed head is ready, and then the individual seeds.
And
That's
pretty
the general layout.
universally, it doesn't have its color anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
That's usually, yeah. That seems to be a good indicator for a lot of species, is the loss of color. So, yeah, and of course, the timeline is vague, as we know, things are different times of year and stuff, so. Any questions on seed stuff before we move on to the next question?
Okay, thanks, Todd.
Bye, Todd.
See you Wednesday.
Yeah, see you then. Seed questions? Good, okay, moving on. And it's too bad we last Todd for this one. I'd like to ask you about that. We'll talk about it Wednesday. This was a question that we wanted to pose about sprayer preferences. If people have strong opinions, Lawrence, you want to talk about that a little more?
Yeah, we've been stocking these very inexpensive Zep brand of what we've been using recently. We've tried other brands that are pretty inexpensive. And we get lots of them for cheap, usually at Menards or something. We can take them to Libby and put them in the cabinet, go like crazy, and they don't tend to last a long time. But they're cheap. But we also don't love the idea of having to constantly be buying these things, probably replenishing people's supplies because they keep breaking. It's a kind of a big hassle to keep buying them over and over and over again. And so we're just considering buying some better quality sprayers for some, in some cases, significantly more money. There are some trigger pump style sprayers, like this one in the middle, that is of better quality, it seems, although we haven't used it a lot. It's quite a bit more expensive at 22 bucks. This one in particular is only a 16 ouncer compared to the 32 ounce Zep brand. So we'll draw back there probably. However, you can get these pump style sprayers like the one on the right. There's a couple that are not so good that we've tried. This Birchmeyer brand one, decent apparently. We just bought a couple to try them out. And then there's another one that we've purchased that is pretty good as well. If they break, the nozzles can be replaced. Everything has a part that you can buy and replace, but they are significantly more expensive. So we are very curious to know what land stewards think. Folks in the room, folks in the call, folks that are listening to the recording, if you can file your preferences with us, we would like to know what you'd like to do. Keeping in mind that the challenge of getting those nicer ones, we won't be able to buy a whole ton of them all at once and hand them out, left and right. We have to figure out how to get these in your hands. For it. So, thoughts on this? We'll open it up right now.
I don't like to use spray bottles. The buckboard blaster, I love, and I've made a couple herbicide sticks.
Oh, okay.
So they're much more efficient because you're putting it right, you don't have the overspray or anything else, and you use a lot less chemicals.
What about like trees, the bigger stuff? Popcorn blast around the whole thing?
Well, it all depends on the tree is. But I usually have a bottle, but the herbicide stick that I use, I can usually just wipe it around the outside and get enough to squeeze out so it kind of runs down the side.
So like a what does your stick look like? It's a sponge?
It's a PVC pipe. The state uses 1/2 inch and I went to 1 inch. And then for my wick, I use a wool applicator that, it fills up, but it doesn't grip as you're walking around because the herbicide pretty well. So
What holds the applicator onto them?
just you roll it up and you stuff it in the pipe. Like one of the bad things that I don't like about it is you use it, it pushes the wick back into it. So you got to carry a little forceps to pull it out. And everybody thinks you're, what are you going to do with that? Oh, it's going to be 420 something. But no, that's the inconvenience I found. I think the prairie enthusiasts may sell some of those.
Yeah, different sizes.
Yeah, but I have one that's about 18 inches that holds, got 8 ounces, and it's easy to hold in one hand, clippers in the other, and just go along and flip in the spot, and it seems to be pretty efficient. And then I have a longer one that I use for basil barking.
One thing about using a smaller, I think it's nice to carry less, weight, but then it feels like the quality of your herbicide gets kind of bogged down when you're refilling bottles or you're refilling your applicator. You also have more potential for spill. And I just wonder if there is something where we could have decent, a little bit more sturdy head to spray out of, but then have replaceable bottoms, because the bottles themselves start to weaken, and then you you have to keep opening to let the air so they don't collapse. And then again, you know, there's also in the ZEP, it pinches that little clear tube between the trigger and the thing that goes down in. So it feels like if we could get bottles that we could fill, you know, in a, like, we use our garage or whatever, we could fill the bottles and cap them, not with an applicator, not with the trigger, but just have a cap.
And then replace.
And then pull the trigger, you know, when you are on a big stump or whatever, so there's less, I don't know, it seems to me, like I've not had luck with the applicators that are like the hockey stick applicator. It's like the sponge saturates, oversaturates and drips, or it's hard to see through the PVC, and where are you at with how much herbicide is in there, and you overfill. But it just might be, I guess I just need to figure out the pace of this. You know, sometimes when you're ready to go, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, shoot. You kind of hurry up and wait, and that's when you have some problems. But I wish that we had a way of keeping the bottles fairly fresh and reusing a higher quality spray top.
Do you feel like the spray tops last though? I feel like those go out a lot of the times too.
They do. Now we have like this Gempler store in Mount Horeb, and they put stuff in the back room for half price or whatever at the end of the season. So I pick things up and have found some nicer ones.
Mhm.
But then you have to figure out how are you gonna, if you do get a clog in those expensive
Mhm.
sprays, how much can go down your utility sink? Should it just be outside in your, you know, in a little gravel patch you have somewhere?
Mhm.
How do you deal with that? But I'm kind of, just for myself, I'm just trying to get more of the stuff on the right,
Mhm.
but I'm still transitioning bottles.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I used the one in the middle a couple times, and I think the bottle would hold up for you better because it's much more hard-sided and it doesn't like collapse as much. I do think the frustration is that it's small and you have to figure out a way to mix herbicide. And so you're either mixing like an incredibly tiny amount of herbicide or creating a larger mix that you're then pouring into it. And then of course you can worry about like having too much and it's sitting out and how it eventually precipitating and stuff like that. But I do like the style of that bottle. It has a very bendable straw that's like, I mean, completely can move around the entire bottle, and there's a weight at the end of it so that you can spray upside down or at any angle, and it will always go to wherever the herbicide is at, no matter how low the bottle is. So that's really nice. But we haven't used it enough yet to say if like the tip is going to clog or anything like that. But I think that would help with the bottle quality itself. It's just a pretty small amount for $22.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm a little weird at using a spray bottle with volunteers. I like the little bottles, good sponge tip. They seem safer for people who don't typically deal with herbicides. But as a landowner myself, I like a good spray bottle. Sometimes you just need more oomph, and I just go through those little sponge tips like crazy.
Mhm.
And I'm really hard on them. Whereas for some of the bigger brush, I'd like to use a spray bottle. It just seems to be more efficient, especially if it has pinpoint accuracy and you just kind of do a ring on and fill in the middle.
Mhm.
Sometimes I use both, or I use a spray bottle and I use the sponge tip to
Oh, getting creative.
to smush it around. It's a, you know, 2 hands, but that's not that common. But I guess, I don't know, Liz, I don't think we do spray bottles with that volunteers.
Well, I did initially, and for the reasons that I've mentioned, but I'm not using these anymore. And so we first transitioned to the prairie enthusiasts. They have 2 different size sticks. But the buckthorn blasters, I like better in that because those herbicide sticks are kind of fragile. And I had to rig up a way to store them. And fairly a multi-stage way to fill them because, you know, you've only got something that's wide. Whereas the buckthorn blasters are easier and most volunteers like them better.
Even if they have to bend over.
Right, go through a lot of sponges. One time on a Dane County Parks workday, when I got extremely frustrated with the spray bottles, like the Zep one,
Yeah.
I went through like 3 and none of them were working. One of your folks gave me a pressure one, and that worked. And then, wow, if I wanted a spray bottle, I would ask the friends at Donald Park, to buy us a really good.
Yeah. With what you experienced and what we regularly experience.
Yeah.
This one doesn't work. This one doesn't work.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's true of these too. It's not always perfect,
Yeah.
but this brand seems to be a little bit better than Birchmeyer. And it's got this nice tip where you can spray it at all different angles.
Yeah, especially if we're not using it a lot. Maybe there's some tasks where it's faster to spray around something than to swab it. I'm not sure, we haven't gotten.
We were cutting some small walnuts last fall, which was big, and it's a sponge that takes forever, whereas a spray bottle works better. So that's not much.
So maybe the answer is we should get some of the nicer spray bottles and only get a few of them and then have more variety of herbicide applicators available.
Everyone has their own preferences.
Yeah, well, and it sounds like a lot of you guys have already figured it out in your own groups, but maybe we want some more stocked with a few options.
Jen,
I'll just say this has been an issue forever. about the spray bottle. Yeah. But one thought I had is, does the bottle have to be made out of something in particular because of what you're putting into it? Like there's a lot of home cleaning products that are spray bottles that couldn't we recycle them as herbicide applicators, and that wouldn't cost anything. I have 6.
Yeah.
Already.
I think there's some types of plastic and the seals in particular that aren't compatible.
Yeah.
With the Garland and the oil, like Plantain seals is what I've been told, or the style of plastic.
Yeah, I've seen people who attempted and reused like old like spray bleach bottles or whatever, and I think it worked okay, but they gave out pretty quickly. And maybe like if you're doing like water-based, if you're just having to do something small as water-based, it's useful. But yeah, I think with oils, it might not last super long. But I mean, you could certainly try it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. The attempt, like I said, it's free. So
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've done like so many things, so, but another thing is, if we're cutting, we'll have a group of people, new volunteers who are cutting, and then we'll have 1 or 2 experienced volunteers with the spray bottle who are also supervisors.
Yeah.
And as long as they don't get, we keep them in a bunch so they don't go here and there and you can't find the stumps.
Mhm.
That works pretty good.
Anyone online?
yeah, we haven't got anything in the chat, but does anybody who's on Zoom right now want to give any input or questions about spray bottles or other herbicide applicator preferences? I think we've got Don on here.
Yeah, I'm changing my view here to make sure I'm alive.
Yeah,
So
I
we
got,
have, all right, we have found the buckthorn blaster or its derivatives are handy for doing small buckthorn type things with inexperienced people. You get less spill. We have had some pressurized bottles that don't last quite as long. I think back to your point with the oil-based, some of the seals don't make it after a while. But the one thing about pressurized, we've had, I call it accidental sprays, where you're gripping it, but if you, depending on the trigger mechanism, you get the thumb, as opposed to a trigger. If it's on top, you can actually discharge it on to your partner or wherever. So, but the spray seems, when you've got hundreds and hundreds of things to do, the spray bottle is, there might be overspraying, but if you're trying to do thousands of willows, that's the only practical side of doing it. So I think, and back to your price point, I can't answer the ratio, but yeah, the Zeps don't last as long. They're not as tough, but good gracious, at 5 to 1, or if you're just taking out back to the spill, if you're trying to keep reloading a 16 ounce all the time in the field, you got more chances for spills than you do for, you lose a lot of efficiency in that. So I don't have the answer for you, but I think the inexpensive and replacement and back to your, I have no real experience with, when you pull that top out and you want to change, you still got to be careful about dripping. You don't want to, you can replace, I like the idea of the cap, but it may be just better to get more volume and just not worry. And back to the disposal, which I think you mentioned, you got to be careful what, you just don't recycle plastic. You got to, if it's got a garland or, well, anyway, oil-based stuff is tough to clean up to make it, you can't really recycle it. The bottles have to be rinsed so many times, and I forgot the ratio. You got to do triple rinses and stuff like that. So that can be pretty, and then you got to dispose of all that. So you got to consider the recycling. It's not easy. Thanks.
great point, Don. Thank
Those
you.
all need to get thrown away, right, in the garbage.
Yeah, I don't think you can recycle.
Yeah.
It's a touch.
Yeah, I've always triple rinsed garland containers just so that we weren't like getting any even in the garbage, but I think maybe there was one place that I saw that was like willing to take them and try to do something with them, but I think for the most part, yeah, they don't want that in recycling, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So then when you're rinsing, you're not rinsing into a drain that's gonna go into water treatment plant.
Right, you want to
Right.
rinse it out on
Rinsing and-
gravel
yeah,
or on
yeah.
whatever, yeah, take a garden hose and flush it out the backyard or whatever works for you, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Anything else from those in the Zoom before we move on? Okay, we can come back to it later if people have more thoughts they want to give on it, but cool. Well, I think that was all of the scheduled things we had. Oh, there's a picture here there wasn't before. This is from Walking Iron. All right, this is the one that Shane sent us the other day. So there's some cardinal flower and some of the new plantings of Walking Iron looking awesome. So, all right, that's the scheduled stuff. So open floor if anybody on Zoom or here in person, questions, comments, things we want to go back to.
I've got a flower question.
Yeah.
I thought I saw royal catchfly at
Ooh.
Donald Park. And I looked up the range of that plant, and it's, I guess it has been found in Dane County, but not in Iowa County where I live. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that particular plant.
Just, prairie restoration.
Yeah, it was near the Cops Knoll entrance at Donald.
Yeah, I think there's some that Schumacher.
We have it in our.
We
mix.
have some that we got as part of a planned rain garden that, so we have it in our rain garden at Steward, and that came as kind of a kit, from, the Land and Water Resource free plants or plants for schools, plants for parks program. So I know it gets used.
So it sure is, sure is nice this time of year, but it's really not for our zoning, right?
That's my question, is that we might be out of range a little
So
bit.
I thought it's a little bit north.
Yeah, I think it's like on the edge, like you're
Yeah.
saying, because we definitely had it in northern Illinois, or at least, I mean, I guess most places it was in restorations, although I think it might have been on a couple of remnants, but, yeah, I think we are kind of at the edge of where it would be native, so, I mean, if it's in a mix that you get, I don't think that's bad, you know, some of that stuff where it's like you're on the edge, it's, you know, it's not like it's hurting anything, it's native, but,
Right.
yeah, so you totally could have seen it.
It's like the purple cornflower versus purple.
Yeah, it's kind of a gray area. So,
Yeah, the zones are moving too, and things are moving more.
yeah, absolutely.
We
We can
might
see
be
that.
starting to be.
Yeah, let's plant it.
If you get normal, get ahead of it. That's a whole other topic, but.
I know where you get some.
Well, I have it
Steward
in my
Park.
garden, and I thought, well, maybe I'll take a seed and plant it in my prairie, but I thought, well, it doesn't really grow in Iowa County, so I'm not gonna,
Hmm.
so.
Yeah,
It's a cool plant, the hummingbirds like it.
yeah.
It
And
is
it's the
beautiful.
only pollinator, so
Oh,
it's just interesting to learn about the plant. And it's called Catchfly, because it's sticky and little flies catch on it.
Oh,
I didn't know that, there was really a purpose for the name.
Yeah, I've collected the seed before, and even the seed is like still a little sticky towards the end, I think, but I didn't know it was just butter or just hummingbird, so that's cool.
Cool.
Makes sense.
is there, it seems like now, I've been out of the loop for a while, but it seems like now, pale Indian planting is kind of a concern. Is that true with the county planting?
Too much of it?
I don't know, I just see many pictures of people pulling it out or cutting out the heads or whatever.
I mean, we don't spread it around on purpose really anymore, but I don't go after it. I don't think on the scale of problems that exist in the world, natural communities, I don't think that one's being at the top.
Yeah, I mean, I think that about a lot of like, common weedy native species where it's like, yeah, it might be getting a little too abundant, but until you notice it like completely pushing out other plants,
Yeah.
there's so many other things to worry about. I do think it's interesting to see like the perceptions of species change over the years and also just like in slightly different ranges. Cause like, I remember like 5-6 years ago in Northern Illinois, we were like, yeah, pale Indian plantain. Hey, Acacia, we love it. It's so great. And you know, there's,
Steward Park. I'm
and it's
happy to
still
see.
not super thick down there, but it is very thick in places around here. And I don't know if that's a regional thing or climate or whatever, but it's definitely, I can see why people worry about it because it's so thick around here in places. But when I see people pulling it, when they've got brush and other invasives around, it feels like a fool's errand a little bit. But, you know, we kill other natives occasionally, like sumac and stuff, so something to think about, so keep an eye on. But I don't think we would personally do anything about it.
Yeah, interesting.
Be around if you wanna chat a little bit or have some snacks here.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, all of these get recorded and posted on YouTube. So if you know someone who missed it, wants to see it, or you want to come back to something we talked about, this will be on the, I think it's either on the County Parks YouTube or the Land and Water Resources YouTube. So you'll find them there.
Anyone with opinions about spray bottles, let us know.
Yeah, we're happy to hear.
We're curious to know what people think and want to make volunteering as enjoyable as possible. And I know I'm not enjoying myself when there's spray bottles are not working.
Yeah.
Yes, functioning equipment efficiency. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Claire isn't gonna show up with a slide or presentation of your hiking trip.
No.
She's
I
still
got some
on
pictures
it.
on it.
You should request that for next time.
Well, it should be